And we knew that it had already been done, but it hadn't been done up to a standard where I believed the emotion of the character, where I believed that the heart and soul of the actor was truly there in the final character. So we created a new method, and it's called image-based facial performance capture. And the way we do it is we put a helmet on the actor's head, very thin, very small, and it has a little boom that comes out, kind of like a concert microphone. And on that boom is a camera, very small, standard definition video camera. And it shoots the actor's face, so no matter what they're doing, if they're running, jumping, turning, fighting, whatever they're doing, it's capturing a locked-off, tight close-up of the actor's face. And it sees how their lips move, their teeth, how their tongue interacts and forms speech, sees the eye movement. All of this data gets streamed into the computer model of the character and brings that model to life. Now, we capture the body in the normal, traditional manner of motion capture with the suits with the markers all over it. I'm sure most people have seen that clips on TV. That wasn't the revolutionary part. The facial part was the revolutionary part. And I was a little concerned that maybe when the actors showed up, that they wouldn't want to act with a helmet on their head and a little camera sitting out in front of their face. It's a legitimate concern. I'm sure you're thinking, I'd never do that. I found out something very interesting. After the first few sessions, after the first few weeks of capture, the actors seemed to really love it. And at first I thought they were just sort of being polite to me and were very enthusiastic about the film. But it turns out that they really loved it. And the actors that worked doing the performance capture characters in Avatar, they worked on the film for over a year, some of them. And they never lost that interest, that love of the process. And I figured out why. And it's because of the difference between performance capture acting and acting for a camera. When you act for a camera, you do the scene multiple times. You'll do a wide shot, and then you'll do some closer coverage. Maybe you'll shoot over the shoulder to one actor and then turn around. And turning around is kind of a big deal. You have to turn all the lighting around and move the cameras. It takes hours and hours to do. And every single time you move that camera to a new position, the actor has to reproduce their performance again and again. And if there's a moment where you have to cry in a scene or laugh at a joke in a scene or whatever it is, or look into the leading lady's eyes with love, you have to do that over and over and over. With performance capture, you do it once. At least you do it once to your satisfaction. And then all the camera coverage is done later. So I found out that the actors loved it because it was a pure form of acting. And it was a pure form of directing for me because I wasn't concerned with all that stuff. I didn't care about the lighting and what the extras were doing in the background and you know, if a car was driving by at the wrong time or whatever it might be. I was just there for them. And that's why I believe they really enjoyed this process, and that's why I believe their performances are so good. And then I had to task the visual effects team after the fact to make sure that those performances arrived in the final character, in the Avatar characters, with no loss whatsoever, no loss to the emotionality. And we got all that working, and you know, we made a lot of mistakes. It was a long process. It was an exploratory process, very much like a research project. We made mistakes. We learned from it. It was probably the most stimulating and interesting moment of my career because here I was. I'd been a director for 25 years. And as you know, a director has to always have the answers. Even if you don't really have the answer, you have to have the answer. And here was a situation where we were encountering so many new things that I would say, you know, guys, I don't know what to do next. What do we do here? And sometimes my little team of investigators wouldn't know the answer either. So we'd stop in the middle of a shooting day, pull up a table, sit down and talk about it until we figured out what to do next. And I thought, this is the coolest thing to be doing because we are so far on the frontier that we can't go to a book and look it up. We can't go to a manual. There's nobody to call. We had to figure it out ourselves. And we loved that. And the cast felt that. They felt that they were part of something new and exciting. And there were some bells and whistles that are really interesting. We had a thing called the virtual camera. And when I say all the camera stuff was done later, I still had to have a sense of what that would look like. So I had my virtual camera, and I could look through it. And you have to imagine, when we're capturing this, it's an empty stage. It's like this gray floor here. There's no set there. There's no jungle. When I looked through the virtual camera, I could see Zoe Saldana or Sam Worthington as if they were in the jungle of Pandora as their 10-foot-tall blue characters with their long tails and their big golden eyes. That's what I saw through my camera. It was like a window into another world. And that was my primary tool working as a director. And I would use that as a kind of director's viewfinder to block the scene. Then I'd set it aside and forget it, and we'd focus on the acting. And I'd go back later and I'd create all the shots. So we worked our way through this whole capture process, and then we had to shoot the live action. Because the film is both. It has both a CG portion and a live action portion. For the live action portion, we used the 3D camera systems that Vince Pace and I had developed for the documentary films, but we had been improving them steadily over a period of years. It was a 7-year development process. And by this point, we called it the Fusion camera system, and it was a cinema-grade camera. It was there for the sole purpose of making 3D movies. And we were very proud of this camera. Of course, it broke down and it was glitchy and all those sorts of things, but that was part of the fun. Again, we were pioneering. So we shot the live action portion. Took about 4 months, and we really sort of figured out the ground rules for how to shoot good 3D so that it would all cut together and flow nicely. So we finished that, and then we went into the post-production process. Now imagine this. We're spending on the order of $250 million, and we're 3 years into a 4.5-year film before we see one shot that actually proves that what we've set in motion is going to work. And when we finally got that shot, and it was a close-up of our girl, Neytiri, and she's looking at Jake. And if anybody's seen the movie, she's about to shoot him with her bow, and she decides not to. And you see that decision play out in her eyes. She was alive. She looked real. And we just sat there. We completed that little scene. It was 6 or 7 shots. And we just sat and watched the scene over and over again because we realized this was going to work. We just had one little problem. We had to do the other 2,600 shots in which those characters appeared. Somehow managed to do that all the next 18 months. And interestingly, the way it works is that it all gets crowded, like with every process, it all gets crowded into the last few weeks. And I think we finished something like 1,200 shots in the last 5 weeks before we had to deliver the movie. The interesting thing was that wasn't our biggest problem. Our biggest problem was marketing the picture, because we didn't have big movie stars in the film. We didn't have Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, or yourself. We had a cast of relative unknowns, except for Sigourney Weaver, but she was in a supporting role. And we had no brand awareness of any kind. It wasn't, the 6th Harry Potter film or the 4th Spider-Man film or the 3rd Mission Impossible film. But yet we were making a piece of entertainment that had to play at a global level, had to be successful internationally, and we had no brand awareness. So how do we create that? So again, the first thing we did was we went to the exhibitors. So we went to Amsterdam to Cine Expo, and we showed them 25 minutes of the film in 3D. Some of it live action, some of it CG, mostly CG. We took them into the Pandoran rainforest, and especially the night portion of it where everything's glowing was very dreamlike. And we got rave reviews from the exhibitors and from collected press. And we got the exhibitors on our side. They started to get ready, to put in more screens to be ready for the film. They had enough time to do that. So it really started to build a wave of buzz. And then that wave of buzz continued through Comic-Con. And then we did something kind of extraordinary. Every time we had showed 20 minutes or so of the movie to friends or to a selected group of people, we got such a powerful feedback from them that they really wanted to see the rest. They wanted to see what happened next. So I thought, why not do that? Why not let the public see 15 minutes of the film? So we thought, how to do this? So in August, we took 150 IMAX theaters around the world in 40 countries, and we invited people to come for free and watch our movie. 15 minutes of it. That's unprecedented. That had never been done before. And we didn't know if it was going to blow up in our face or if it was going to work. But what I was afraid of with Avatar was the 30-second TV spot. I thought there was such a potential for these blue faces to not work when you just see them in a moment. You could quickly judge them as maybe animation or just something strange that doesn't make sense. And we knew that it worked within the context of the film. So this Avatar Day experiment, that's what we called it, Avatar Day, this experiment, this global experiment actually worked very well, because what happened was the same day we released a teaser trailer, and the teaser trailer bombed. We got a lot of negative feedback from that. And if we hadn't done the other thing, we'd have been sunk. But what happened was it started controversy. The people that saw it in the movie theater said, no, this is a fantastic experience. And the people that saw it online said, nah, it looks, they look like Smurfs. So I thought, well, controversy is good, because at least people are talking about it. And that's actually how we started a sort of viral marketing campaign that worked on a global level to raise awareness about the movie. And then, of course, we followed up with good promotional partners. We had Coke Zero, LG, McDonald's, and Panasonic, who did a combined, I think, $100 million in promotional awareness value to get it out there. Because this type of picture, everybody's got to know about it before it opens. Now, I'd say we were 70% successful in all of that. When the picture opened, it opened on December 18th. It did pretty well. Wasn't a record weekend by any stretch of the imagination. We did about $75 million, which, you compare that to Alice in Wonderland, which just did $115 million. So, pretty good, not a record. But I wasn't concerned about it, because I believed that if we could just get the picture out there to enough people, it would start to work its magic, that the 3D would bring them in, that the world of Pandora would work on them, and that's exactly what happened. So we started to actually build momentum. We actually went up in some markets, and this is where I really became aware of how much things had changed with the 3D. We had markets that had never been significant markets before suddenly doing enormous amounts of business. Russia had 320 3D screens. We made $100 million in Russia. No one had ever made any money in Russia before. China, we made $200 million in China on 600 3D screens. Now, there were a bunch of 2D screens as well, but what we saw was a pattern where we were making 80%, 80% of our revenue in some of these territories from the 3D screens as opposed to the 2D screens. And we saw that in France, where we made $150 million on 520 screens. In the UK and Japan, we saw that, and other emerging markets like Vietnam. We saw this pattern worldwide. So I really believe that the 3D is a significant part of the success of Avatar. So now, what happens next is we get a big stampede. And now everybody thinks 3D is the killer app. So Hollywood starts to stampede toward this. But, of course, they do it the wrong way. They start to try to take movies that they've already made in 2D and quickly switch them into 3D, which you can't do. They're going to try to do it in 8 weeks. Now, I believe firmly that you shoot in 3D. You get the 3D cameras and you shoot in 3D if you want the film to be in 3D.